Matthew Stafford staying in Los Angeles. Deebo Samuel headed to Washington. And what about the quarterbacks and wide receivers at the NFL Scouting Combine, who won themselves some money with their workouts and their showings in Indianapolis? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Appreciate you. Let us know you stopped by. We know you're already subscribed, so just hit the thumbs up and say hi to us. Let us know you're here. And if you're not subscribed, you're new to the program, please subscribe. And you can find us on YouTube or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, let's start with Deebo Samuel. The first big trade of the offseason has hit, and it happened while everybody was in Indianapolis for the scouting combine. And the San Francisco 49ers are sending Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. And all the Niners are getting back is a fifth-round pick here, Matt. And there's a lot going on with the San Francisco 49ers. And, it was no secret that the 49ers had allowed Deebo to seek a trade. And John Lynch had spoken about it when he was at the podium at the combine. And, some people that knew Deebo well, one, his old assistant GM, now the GM of the Commanders, who helped draft Deebo Samuel in San Francisco, was the one that pulled off the trade. But D'Amico Ryans in Houston, who was his former coach, said that, yes, we are interested in Deebo Samuel. And so which is something you don't really hear very often from people who are in charge of an NFL team. But the lowly price of a fifth-round pick, and for the 49ers, why it makes sense is now they take a $30 million cap hit because they did a little bit of a restructuring of Deebo's contract, even though it was only a 3-year contract and like a year in or maybe 2 years in. Last offseason maybe is when it was, and they did a little restructure, which pushed more void years and then made it so there's more dead money now. So all of the contract is kind of $30 million is accelerating toward the 49ers cap this year, but then they don't have to pay the $17 million roster bonus that he was going to be due on March 22nd. So cap dollars, it hits them, but real dollars, they save some money. And that's why they were willing to do the trade now. And they didn't want to cut him because another team is going to pay that if they traded before March 22nd. And the Commanders are in a position where they can trade for a playmaking wide receiver, a guy that can do a lot, catch and run for their offense, and pairs well with, I think, Terry McLaurin. So I get this deal. It makes sense for both sides, even though probably on the surface people say, well, Deebo Samuel for a fifth-round pick, that seems like a steal.
Yeah, let's start with Washington. First off, I think they're clearly a destination spot, that people want to play there now. And boy, as things change in 365 days. I mean, that was like one of the most, that was Hades. And now it's, a wonderful, blissful island resort. I mean, everybody wants to go there with Jaden Daniels. And I think Deebo makes them better, clearly, even if he's 85% of his best day or whatever, which I don't think he is 100% of his best day. But I do think there's familiarity, as you mentioned, with the organization. I think he's a different type receiver than McLaurin, who's the, true man coverage, prototypical, does all the hard stuff kind of big-time receiver. And McCaffrey, who they've invested in recently. I mean, obviously, he's very different. I don't know what his future is, if he has a great future or not. Who knows? I don't love that Deebo and McLaurin are give or take about the same age, but I think having some veteran receivers with a very, very young quarterback has value. And, yeah, for a fifth-round pick, great. I frankly thought that's what he would go for. I mean, I was often asked on Steeler Radio, what's Deebo's cost? And I thought, about a fifth. I mean, I think that's the going rate. But I also think, your Niners are the more interesting side of this. Is I think they're going to be really active this offseason. I mean, like we're already hearing Ayuk could have been on the move, still be on the move. I don't know if I believe that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me contractually coming off an injury at all, but I don't know why his name's out there. And you're hearing things like Jonathan Allen was talked about in this trade as well. Curious your thoughts on both those matters. But Deebo leaving San Francisco is not surprising to me at all.
Yeah, he has to be traded. The 49ers said they were going to try to do it, and they did it. So Deebo Samuel now in Washington. The more interesting thing is the Ayuk stuff for the 49ers. And essentially John Lynch said that he's available. In his video.
Yeah, like he didn't really hide it.
We had to like read it a few times and look at the transcript and then listen to what he said. It was like, what is he saying here? Because it's essentially.
I'm going to pick this again. I want to talk about that for a month or like 5 months straight. That's what I'm hoping.
Great. I can't wait to do that again.
Yeah.
If the 49ers are willing to listen to trade offers for Brandon Ayuk right now, it's mismanagement. How is he not already a Pittsburgh Steeler? Is my question.
Right. I mean, if you guys are going to pick up the signing bonus, I'll take the rest. You did the hard part.
What was the entire last offseason all about? And like, that's $40 million in dead money to trade Brandon Ayuk. Like, you can't trade when you do a big contract with a guy. You can't trade him for usually the first couple of years. You're going to take a huge cap hit. Right. So you got a couple of games out of him, then starts the ACL, and then now you're going to take a big cap hit. Like, that doesn't make sense at all. But essentially, John Lynch told us that they're willing to do that. And I think part of the Deebo trade is cash. And there's cash that a team is actually paying players. And then there's the salary cap, which is accounting. And look, I studied broadcasting in college, so I didn't have to do accounting, right? Like I don't
right.
Side of the NFL.
I was a creative writing major. Yeah.
Frustrating and kind of, but John Lynch was asked, hey, is there any truth to, there was a report that teams were reaching out to try to trade for Brandon Ayuk. Is there any truth to that? And he's like, well, that's what happens when you have good players. And then he went on this long diatribe about how we're the top cash spending team in the NFL. And I think in recent history, the 49ers are second behind, I think, the Philadelphia Eagles, as far as like how much literal cash they're spending to players. And they've been a team that would manipulate the cap in a way to pay the most actual money and then still have cap space. And
that's the only advantage in this league to having richer owners than other teams.
Yes, and more willing owners to spend. You can get a little bit of an advantage in that way. But basically, he was like cautioning, is like, we've done a lot of that, and we've got to get younger. And but that was the answer to the Ayuk question. And I was like, well, if you answered that to Trent Williams, a question about Christian McCaffrey, even Deebo, it would have made sense. But he answered that to the Ayuk question, which is really weird, and essentially was saying like, yeah, we're open for business. So I don't know if that means you could trade for McCaffrey or Trent Williams too, but he made it sound like, and then some, 49ers insiders have said that, yeah, like you could trade for Brandon Ayuk right now, which is just, it's bordering on mismanagement, just a strange situation for the team you're trying to build. And so, well, now what are you going to do on one hand,
the Steelers aside, I'm giving you less for him now than I would have before the contract.
Yeah, well, on one hand,
an injury, and he wasn't great before his injury, but now the contract's better, I guess, in one way, because I don't, it's a favorable contract to trade for, not a train inside guy.
Right. So if you're the Steelers, you already know what kind of player he was, and like not having training camp probably made him start a little slow, and then he has an injury.
Might not be fair. You're right.
It's the ACL part that makes him a difficult person to trade for your team. But the Niners already spent a lot of that cash, and so it's kind of like a sweetheart of a contract if you were ready to give him that same deal, unless you think, oh my God, thanks for bailing us out of potentially making a mistake, 49ers. So I don't know, and I wouldn't even begin to know what his trade value would be if they trade him. But for him to be available just does not scream that the plan is solid over there. And what I read between the lines is that Kyle and that there's maybe some conflict and misaligned ideas, especially now that Jed York and ownership is looking at an even bigger contract for someone like Brock Purdy.
All right. And I just think there's going to be change in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think they're button heads a little bit. It's between like the front office and not even John Lynch. When I say front office, I'm talking about the executive suite, the ownership branch of things, the people who are writing the checks. I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are super competitive, and they want to field the best team possible, and they don't want to lose good players, and that's how they manage their roster. and they've signed everybody, and ownership has been fine with it. And ownership's probably like looks at the numbers for what Purdy's going to be given this offseason and probably like, okay, look, we've got to slow down on some of this cash spending. This is out of control for a team that just won 6 games. And so that tells me that
certainly comes from ownership. That's
right. That's an ownership.
Shanahan or Lynch's choice. That's
I don't
the
think
guy right in the chat.
John Lynch are butting heads, but I do think there is some misalignment between management, ownership, and how the team is built and put together. So that could be.
I just wonder, and maybe you guys could explore it more on Locked On Niners, or maybe you already have. I apologize if I haven't caught up, but it's like maybe ownership says we don't want to be as incredibly top heavy as we have been. You know, like let's get more B-level dudes as opposed to when Ayuk and McCaffrey get hurt in the same year. Now we're picking near the top 10 again. You know, like we're a little too fragile, you know?
Yeah, and by the way, we have and we will continue, and I'm going to record a little bit later here with Eric Crocker, my co-host for Locked On 49ers, and it's going to be one of the big topics we're talking about with the Deebo trade and the Ayuk available situation and what actually the plan even is. But that's kind of the thing is their plan has been a little short-sighted all along, and it's really hard to be like, oh, wait a second, let's build long-term now. And you can't do that on the fly, and this Ayuk thing is like probably the perfect example of that. Was like, you should have seen that coming. And apparently the story is that trade was done. The 11th hour, Ayuk was on his way to the Steelers. And we heard some reports that, done deal, done trade, right? Like there
was a day in camp that I expected, I would have bet my mortgage that I was going to see Brandon Ayuk in Latrobe the next day.
I think people in this,
Tomlin was dancing in the bars.
Yeah, they
everyone was excited. Yeah, trust me.
They had Brandon Ayuk.
Right. I don't think this is divulging too much information or get me in trouble, but I remember him yelling over to Arthur Smith in a watering hole saying, "We got you a present for tomorrow." You know,
and apparently what happened is Kyle Shanahan ran upstairs and nixed the deal. Said, "No, don't do it. He's too integral to our offense. Don't trade him." And then they got a deal done and ended up giving him the money. And then now I think ownership, or they're not super happy that they kind of lost the deal and ended up paying him what they were trying not to pay him in the end. And so there's a lot of weirdness going on with the 49ers. And it's a little bit more difficult to build a team around a $60 million a year quarterback than it was around a $1 million a year quarterback. Right. And so that's when you look forward.
That's the elephant in the room. Yeah.
What's the team going to look like in the future build? And if you got coach and quarterback, you're going to be okay. Is he that dude, Brock Purdy? Because he's going to need to be for what that might be into the future without some of their old aging stars.
I'm going to do your job for you. How about this for a professional teaser? That's what happened with the Rams with Stafford too? It sounded like he was going to the Raiders, and then did McVay run up there and nix it and say, "Let's sign him"? In the 11th hour. Is that what happened?
Let's talk about it. Matthew Stafford apparently staying in Los Angeles, not going to New York with the Giants, not going to Las Vegas with the Raiders. And then let's talk quarterback and wide receivers, those same positions at the Combine, who made themselves some money in Indy next. This episode of Peacock Williamson brought to you by FanDuel. And it's, no longer football season. I know that's a bummer, but hey, man, I love the offseason just as much as the regular season. And you still bet on the NFL all offseason long. Bet on the next Super Bowl champion, a whole lot more, tons of futures, and bet on the NFL draft as well. Tons of action and NFL draft props, which I love every single year. And speaking of the NBA, which is really getting interesting right now, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off, you can still bet on that fourth quarter comeback. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And you never feel like you miss your chance and your opportunity because there's always something going on at FanDuel. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Matthew Stafford, and according to Diana Rossini, apparently the Rams kind of utilized some other teams around the NFL is what this ends up looking like. And I don't know how close Stafford was actually to possibly becoming a Las Vegas Raider or a New York Giant. There was the story about the Stafford hanging out with Tom Brady in Montana at a ski resort. And maybe that was sort of the pitch to try to get him to want to go to Las Vegas to play quarterback. And that those teams were talking about a fully guaranteed 90 to $100 million two-year contract for Matthew Stafford. So essentially something like $45 to $50 million guaranteed, all of it guaranteed for 2 years. And it sounds like the Rams said, all right, you know what? We can do that. And Matthew Stafford's going to stay with at least 2 more years guaranteed money. Well, who knows? We'll see what happens next offseason. As we know, the NFL changes pretty quick and it can change in 6 months and you don't see it coming. But right now, Matthew Stafford coming back to Los Angeles to play for the Rams. So kind of even heads prevailed kind of in this one, right?
I wish I had more to add to this. I mean, did it just take a deadline to make the contract happen? You know, did they want to be, he wanted to be there and they wanted to want him all along? You know, like, trust me, as a Steeler fan, that's what I felt like. I felt like we were used in the Ayuk trade, like that type of deal. Is that all it was? And were the Raiders and Giants just pawns in the game of life? You know, I mean, or is there something real here? You know, and we put our feet to the fire, and if that's, you do the negotiating for us, and if that's the number we have to match, we're going to match it. And certainly if I'm Stafford, I would rather be with the Rams and McVay than the Giants or Raiders. I mean, Brady would be attractive, and I like the direction that team's going, but New York, they could all be fired in a heartbeat, and you could be in big trouble there. And I will be honest, and I think we said this when these rumors popped up, that the first time I read that rumor, that Stafford could be on the move, I didn't believe it, but then I started to,
And maybe that was the genius stroke of the Rams all along.
Yeah.
Is to use everybody else to finally find what that number was going to be for Matthew Stafford. Or maybe the genius of Stafford all along to say, I want out of here. You're not going to give me the money I want to utilize the team, because look, the Rams are a better spot for Stafford and the Rams are a better team with Stafford. So it kind of had to end this way. And that's why we were both skeptical. And so maybe we got used along the way as well.
Sure. I mean, enough people and Shefty and all these guys are throwing it out there like, well, maybe it is true. It took me a while to believe it, but stranger things have happened. He got traded from the Lions to the Rams.
So this is
they also signed Alaric Jackson too. It's one we did not mention that. I think he took a big free agent off the market, and they have a lot invested in their offensive line. And it sounds like Jackson, the guard that they signed a year ago from the Lions, is going to get cut or traded too. Because remember, they gave huge contracts to Dotson and Jackson, and Avila was going to be the center. But now Avila is cheap, and he's going to be the guard, and Bo Limmer really stepped up as a rookie as a 6th-round pick. So Jackson's going to be out, and I guess that money is going to the left tackle. So it kind of, those dominoes fit for the Rams. And if I'm going to invest in Stafford, I'm investing in a left tackle. I mean, a rookie left tackle. Yeah. They go hand in hand. Like, the ownership's probably not like, well, let's not give Stafford all this guaranteed money and not know who our left tackle is. That doesn't sound real smart.
So the domino here is now what happens at the top of the NFL draft, because the Tennessee Titans are apparently the Tennessee Titans. The reports coming out of there is they're just trying to maximize their first pick in the draft, and whether that's in a mammoth trade that they get, or if it's drafting a quarterback there, or the best player in the draft that's not a quarterback. It's hard for me to believe anything about what's going on with the Tennessee Titans there until they actually either make a pick or they make a trade and someone moves up for potentially a quarterback. But now you have the New York Giants who are at number 3, that if their plan A was Matthew Stafford, well, they got to be more aggressive about what their plan B is too. And they're under the gun over there in New York. And then you have the other team in New York, according to Dan Graziano of ESPN today, the New York Giants and the New York Jets are both interested in moving up to the first overall pick, potentially to draft what we think would be Cam Ward, a quarterback there. And the Las Vegas Raiders have been rumored and reported to be super aggressive and going after Stafford, and they could be in the same boat as well. And you can't expect you're going to get the top quarterback at 6 or 7, and you might not at this point be able to get the second best quarterback if one of these teams really loves one of those guys at 6 or 7. What is your thoughts on the quarterbacks, and did anything change your mind in Indianapolis about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders specifically?
Nothing's changed my mind is how I view them as prospects. But if this bet can be made, now's the time to do it. I think the first 2 picks are going to be quarterbacks. history just shows it. I mean, I know that's a hot take, and with all respect to Carter and what's his face, Hunter. I mean, these guys are great prospects, but they're still have questions around them. They're not. I can't live another breath of my life without them. I mean, they're great, but they have issues. I just think, and maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid again, but the Schefters of the world keep saying the Browns are going to take a quarterback at 2, and they love Sanders, and maybe that is lying season, and I'm just biting the hook again. But I think the Giants, Jets, or Raiders will be aggressive enough to go to 1.
I will say this. If you are the Cleveland Browns, you want the world to believe that you are going to take a quarterback number 2.
Yes. I think it's such a bad idea for them.
I do too.
I mean, they're going to be cutting linemen left and right. And I mean, that's what a way to ruin a quarterback. But they've been good at that over the years, ruining quarterbacks.
And what's really what's difficult for us here and kind of just, from just a spectator's point of view, like none of the top guys did anything. So it's like, you don't really get any. And Carter didn't even weigh in. We didn't get to see what his arm length was and how much he weighs and how tall he is even. Like he got out of there scot-free. We saw at least the quarterbacks, even though they didn't throw or work out, we saw, how big they are. And Cam Ward is so weird. Cam Ward is 6'1.5", 219. He's built kind of like a running back or even a linebacker is really what he looks like. He's so thick in the legs. And he actually had smaller hands at 9 inches even than Jalen Milroe, who's somehow grew an inch between the Senior Bowl and the Combine in 3 weeks.
Like, I can believe whoever measured his hand at the Combine didn't do a great job, or whoever measured his hand at the at Senior Bowl didn't do a great job, both in the opposite directions. But this is fishy.
This is like, hey, we're gonna deposit $1,000 in your bank account, 9 1/4. Okay. 9 1/4. Like someone got to him in the middle of the night, a shady character, the guy who's doing the hand sizes. Hey, 9 1/4 if you want to wake up tomorrow morning. Like what? How does that happen? An inch? Like, and
I know where your kids go to school. Yeah.
And how much can you actually change it? Because I've heard there's ways to manipulate it, and you can do exercises and how much can you make your hands grow? And that's just a fault in the measuring process. If you actually somehow my hands are fairly large, 9 1/2, which is large for a human. For quarterbacks, they always have big hands, so 9 1/2 is not really big for a quarterback. But I'm 6'4", and I got decently sized hands. I wear extra large gloves, 9 1/2. But see how it's like, if I worked on it and I could stretch my thumb, because it goes thumb to pinky, right? So and if you're watching on YouTube, this isn't great radio, but if I'm able to stretch this out and get another half an inch, where
I mean, I'm sure you could do this webbing if you massaged it and stretched it every day. Maybe you could gain an 1/8 or 1/4 or something. I mean, that's
not an inch. An 1/8 1/4, maybe. That's not even close to how. So I don't know.
Some massage therapist that stretches it or breaks your bone. I mean, crazy stuff. But trust me, I went through this with Kenny Pickett like crazy. Can you stretch his hand? I'm like, that sounds insane to me. But maybe a little.
Well, and for the measurement, sure, but for actual practical purposes, I don't know. But
OJ did that too. So he couldn't get the glove on.
Hand size manipulation, man. Oh God, it's
weird stuff.
It's an American. It's just an American thing. We're too focused on hand size over here, I guess. But
the quarterbacks did nothing at the Combine, by the way.
Yeah, and so they didn't throw.
3 of them run.
I guess Shedeur Sanders, his numbers look nearly as big, and his hand size was bigger. Longer arms than Cam Ward, and he was 6'1.5". He was 1/8 of an inch shorter than Cam Ward, but only 7 pounds lighter. So to be 212 for Shedeur and be the same height as Cam Ward and only 7 pounds lighter is probably a win. But he's probably got a lot of water weight, and he didn't run or do anything either. So kind of fishiness. We'll find out there. I just feel like they're kind of telling us a lot about what's going on here. Really,
yeah, strange stuff. And 3 quarterbacks ran.
Only 3, and it was only the guys.
Why did Milroe?
Well, how did Milroe not run? At least that's the one thing that you could make you stand out and look great, especially after having bigger hands suddenly. Which is that's not nothing. Like the hand size that he was measured at the Combine versus the Senior Bowl is legitimately can make or break your career. Like that's how.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
If it's actually really this is the correct size and he actually can control the football versus what the hand size was at the Senior Bowl. There's not comparables to the smaller hand size that was. You know what? I bet teams are going to bring him in and do their own measurements just to find out because that's
might as well
a pretty big deal. And by the way, he's the exact same size too, 6'1.5", 217. So all the same size.
Maybe he spent all his time doing hand exercises instead of working on his 40 for the last 3 weeks.
I guess. I mean, he's still going to be faster than all these guys. Although some guys
bad management. Have your guy run.
I mean, the big winner was Tyler Shuck, right?
I thought so.
Yeah,
came across great. Everyone's cheering for him. You know, he's throwing the ball great. That's my dude, man. Yeah,
his size, he's prototype to run 4.63 laser time in a 32-inch vertical, and to show up at just a hair under 6'5", 219, looks the part, big arm, and show off his athleticism. Like that's what first-round quarterbacks look like. And he's not going to go in the first round.
Personable, you know, right? He was making a big joke out of him, the only one running. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, he might have really, really helped himself out to put himself on the map as, this guy's maybe a backup to, you know what, we could potentially draft this guy and believe that he's going to be a starter. Yeah. And maybe soon because he's played a lot of football now. He's 25 years old.
Biggest hands of all the quarterbacks. So.
Yeah. Very interesting one there.
Yeah, he's very interesting.
Seth Hennigan, Memphis, 4.7, 640. Nice time for him. Brady Cook, Missouri, 6'2", 214, 4.59. Those are the only three.
Yeah, pretty good athletic. Yeah, the only three. Crazy.
Was there a big winner for you from the wide receivers at the combine?
Oh, Golden times 1,000.
Golden?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Golden to me is such a good route runner and stop start and change speeds. And I knew he was fast, but I didn't think he was the fastest guy there. And, oh, by the way, that's 2 combines in a row and 4 Texas receivers that all ran sub 4.3, right? I mean, including Mitchell and, of course, Xavier Worthy and Bond. Like, what is going on with the Longhorns receivers? Yeah,
well, Bond was supposed to be the fast one. He was like, I'm going to run 4.1 or something crazy. He was like, I'm going to break the record. And his first time was like 4.4 something. It was like, oh, it's fast. But, I mean, that's not 4.2s and certainly not 4.1. And he ended up getting the 4.39. So he did go sub 4.4 for
but it's the most disappointing 4.39 in history.
Probably just because of right. 5'10 and 180. So he's built for speed. And the tape is not all that great for him. The tape is really good for Golden, how he gets in and out of his breaks. And that's usually the toughest part is like for really fast guys that can throw down a 4.3 flat, like Golden did, or 4.29 actually was the official number. So sub 4.3, but to be able to put on the brakes, to be able to have the quicks to get in and out of your brakes is pretty huge. You know, he's not the biggest guy, but 5'11", 191. I mean, that that's favorably comps for like, you know, Zay Flowers and some other later first round guys. I think he helped himself out and probably solidified himself in there as, you know, maybe wide receiver 3 or at least a first round pick, a late first round pick.
I'm going to do my receiver ranks tomorrow and I might put him at 1.
Oh, okay.
I might. Yeah. I mean, it's bouncing around in my cranium at the moment. I might put him at 1.
Emeka Egbuka, it was exactly what I expected. He's just kind of medium across the board. That's what his tape shows me. That's what he tested as. A hair under 6'1", 202, not small, not big. 4.5 flat, 40, right? He's not slow, but he's not, you know, a burner or anything like that. He's just he's a batting practice fastball. He is going to be like, you know, at worst a 3, but at best a 2. Like that's what I see Emeka Egbuka is, and that's what his testing numbers were. Luther Burden was as advertised, and he got that 6 foot flat mark, which is huge, 206. He's built really well. He was explosive, little smaller hands, but you know, 4.41 in the 40, quick 10-yard split. You know, looked good out there on the field. Luther Burden probably helped himself, or at least solidified exactly what you thought he was on tape. He didn't show up like 5'10 and a half or something like that. So 6 feet, 206, and
don't change your opinion on him, you know.
Right, yeah, those guys, just kind of check the boxes there. I think my big winner at wide receiver was Jaden Higgins. 6'4".
I would say both the Iowa State guys was going to be on my list here.
Yeah. But Jaden Higgins is like, look out, and he's getting comps too. And look, the field drills were more important than the workout, and the workout was really good because he was 6'4", 214. He has got long arms, 33 and an eighth. 4.47 40 at that size, which is really good. A really good 10-yard split, which is right on with like Luther Burden's 10-yard split. And he's a super explosive guy. 39-inch vertical. And then he's out there running, doesn't drop a single ball in the workouts and the field drills, and is moving very quickly. And starts getting some pretty impressive comps there when you start having that together. And who knows? I wouldn't be shocked at all if a team views him as maybe wide receiver 3 in this class. I think he helped
Just
himself
like a top 50 player.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it's Noel or Noel. It's Noel. Is a different type of receiver, but I think he's very impressive too. He's well built for a smaller guy, but explosive. Both those Iowa State guys. There are 3 guys that ran really fast that are lesser mid-round dudes, but I also think are really interesting. That's Dante Thornton from Tennessee. He's big and fast, downfield, weird offense. And Tremere Dyke from Florida. He kind of came out of nowhere. And Jalen Lane, a lot of people have been talking about too. All those guys, got to go back to the tape on them and see where they're at. But I think that they made money this weekend.
I would say Jalen Royals as well. He hit the 6.
Yeah.
Kind of built similarly. If you don't get Luther Burden in the first, maybe you like Jalen Royals, in the 4th, or I'm not sure what round he's going to go in, but 4.42. Like you look at their testing numbers and their height, weight, speed, and you're like, it looks like identical to Luther Burden. So, he's your run after catch guy. He's your Deebo Samuel type, and there's always the next Deebo in these draft classes. And so if you didn't get Deebo, maybe that's your guy.
Ayer Man, or I always say his name wrong too, from Stanford, is kind of like the Higgins conversation. Like he could be wide receiver 5 or a top 50 pick for sure. I mean, Red's a 4.44. I mean, nice work. Big for a big guy.
What was your takeaway of Tet McMillan? Obviously he's big. He was a little over 6'4", 6'4 and an eighth, 219, big hands, not the longest arms. But didn't run. Is he telling that himself, or is this a situation where he's like, the only thing I can do is lose money, so I'm not going to run?
I kind of feel that way, but I'll be honest. I mean, very different opinions on that guy from people I talk to in Indy. Some people, I mean, like I always do talk about Steelers, but at 21, there's people saying, I think he might be there. And then there's people saying, if he gets out of the top 10, it's insane. Everyone likes him. Everyone compares him with Drake London. Some people think that's a good thing. Some people think it's a bad thing. I'm like, I'll take Drake London in the top 10. He's great, but there seems to be a lot of mixed feelings on T-Mac.
And by the way, if you're looking at him as a wide receiver, I just want to mention Travis Hunter, who weighed in at 6 feet. Was it 6 feet even? Where's he at? 6 feet and 3/8, 188, and but didn't run. So you didn't really get to see much from.
I don't know if I even would if I were him.
That's definitely a situation of you can only hurt yourself. Right. Travis Hunter.
The tape's too good. I mean, unless you run an insane number, is it going to go up? I mean, yeah, we know you're fast. What an athlete he is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. More on the combine. We'll talk running backs and offensive linemen on offense, finish up the defensive side of the ball as well with some of the defensive backs and some really eye-opening numbers there. And your questions. Get those questions in for this week's post-combine pre-free agency mailbag. Free agency coming quick. New league year is March 12th.
Oh, Tez Johnson is the one we had to mention too. 154 pounds and slow.
And he plays fast, so you thought he would run 4.3s, and he runs 4.55, and it's like, yikes. That doesn't mean he's gonna not be a good player, but he's such an outlier. And if you love him, good for you, because now you're going to get him later. Because you can't draft that profile early.
I mean, the Oregon kid Franklin from a year ago dropped to the 4th round. This kid might fall further. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. At Peter Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or drop your mailbag question in the YouTube comments. Subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow, right here, Peacock and Williamson.